conservatives and libertarians needed a way to be able to connect with one another without algorithms pushing them down. We needed this, and we needed it now more than ever. And so I think the timing of this going into this election is crucial.
Thank you. And it's interesting to see where it grows. We actually see the fastest growth in blue states and in purple states where those people do feel alone.
Welcome, I'm John Caldera, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. One of the tough things about being a conservative or libertarian is that so often you're on a platform online trying to have a conversation and you get pulled off. On Facebook, I've had some of my posts removed because they were about gun issues. The question is there a safe place where people can have a conversation? And then along comes this man with an answer. Matt Knoedler, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, for those who don't know, let's start off just real briefly. You're a recovering legislator.
Yep.
You're a recovering lobbyist, is that a good way to put it? Or,
sure.
Yeah, something like that.
Yep.
You've been involved in politics a long time.
That's right. Is this the room for the recovery program?
Yes, this is the alcohol recovery room. We can help you. It's a 12-step program.
Very good.
Am I wrong when I say that there's a problem for conservatives and libertarians? I know progressives don't see it, that we don't have a safe place to meet, to talk, to be online together, to get our messages out. Now that Twitter, for instance, is deciding what is truth, they're putting warnings on, and Facebook pulls posts, GoFundMe pulls campaigns. This is a real issue.
It is. I would argue it's even more concerning than that. There's what the platforms do to suppress speech that is extraordinary and scary, but there is also just the people. There's a recent survey that showed that the only people who really feel comfortable sharing their views online are the far left, and we know that because we all see it on Twitter or on Facebook, and that sort of loud presence from one ideological side causes several problems for people who share our values. They're scared to perhaps engage themselves because they'll be shouted down. There's the fear that you could lose your job if you ask a question or say something that someone on the left takes offense to. And so it's not just that the platforms do things to make those conservatives who feel confident enough to, the people who can't get fired for what they say,
right,
like you, mostly. Not that you haven't tried.
I have been fired. As somebody who's got canceled from the Denver Post for being politically incorrect, and years before that, the same thing with the Daily Camera up in Boulder. There are platforms where you can't speak the way you want to speak because progressives or people who are at least sympathetic to that run the platform. And they don't actually see their cancel culture. They are blind to their cancel culture, and they think that they're doing something to help that communication, that conversation between left and right, not realizing really what they're doing is shutting it down because the left seems bigger at this.
And it's an existential problem, and that was what I realized in 2018 after the election was there is the fear of just engaging and the fear of not being able to express your values. But if you can't, if there are some people who are on the fence and they're watching and they don't see anyone defending those values, and those people who are on the fence, they may know that the person on the far left is off, that something's wrong with their argument, but they don't see anyone articulating, something different, and so either they sit on the sidelines or eventually they maybe acquiesce, even not perhaps compromising their views, but just backing off. But we can't assume that the values that we hold, if we never speak of them and defend them in a place where our children might be watching or friends who care what we think might be watching, then those values will not get passed on to the next generation. I mean, it is that vulnerable, and particularly when you have platforms that are that are suppressing that speech, I consider it to be a existential problem. So
let me put this out there, and those people who might be watching who think we're crazy about this go, what are you guys talking about? they will not understand it. But I can tell you that it is an unsafe world if you're a libertarian or a conservative and you want to express yourselves on Twitter, Facebook, even YouTube, where things get pulled down, where trolls come along and say, no, that was bad, and report you. It's hard to have that conversation. So when you founded Caucus Room 28 years ago, actually, when did you found caucusroom.com?
So we opened the doors to the website almost exactly a year ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
When I saw Caucus Room, and what I saw was basically Facebook or maybe Nextdoor.com, but welcoming for conservatives and libertarians, made for conservatives and libertarians, I saw that this was what we needed. It's only a decade late, but it's what we needed. Give me your definition. What is Caucus Room?
Well, Caucus Room is a place for conservatives to gather and encourage one another online, but organized in a way that is locally oriented. So you are brought into your own local neighborhoods first, and you can talk to friends and neighbors in your area about political issues. But you can also join, local Republican clubs or news groups, or the Independence Institute, of course, it was one of our first groups. It's been just a wonderful, group that puts in wonderful content all the time. And so, there's a lot of news sharing. There's a lot of discussion about upcoming events, and so we just wanted to build that, that community online in a place that first of all, make sure when you join that you are a real person. So we don't allow bots. We think that political dialogue is improved when you have to use your real name when you're talking.
Right, so the amount of hate I get is just spectacular, and I love it. Keep it coming. And so, writing a column, the comment section afterwards is all just ridiculously hateful. Twitter, ridiculously hateful. Even on Facebook, and I know most of these people don't exist because they're not real names. So on Caucus Room, again, imagine Facebook, but for conservatives and libertarians. You verify that every single person who uses this platform is an actual person.
You have to be a real person.
How do you verify that someone's a person?
Well, we use third-party software to make sure that it's the same stuff that like banks use to make sure that they're talking to a real person. And then
so when I signed up, I needed to give you my birth certificate, my social security number, my mother's maiden name.
Not all that, but not
actually,
all that.
It was remarkably easy when I signed up.
Yeah.
I put in my name and address.
Yeah, and we've even come up with some ways we can still verify you're a real person, but you don't have to give us quite as much information as you used to. So,
why is that important that it's only real people?
Well, again, we don't want the bots as you described. We want you to know you're really talking to your actual real neighbors. We do think using your real name improves the discussion, in some ways, we didn't really start with thinking of some other online network that we wanted to emulate. I thought of the caucus system, the caucuses, which were what happens at a political caucus. You go to some like classroom or a school, and you sit in a room with your neighbors and you talk politics for a couple hours, and then you're done. And it's a really good conversation to have, but it's hard to do that. It only happens once every 2 years anyway. And it seemed like something that we should do year round. And I think the things that make that thing special are that they're really your neighbors. And that they're of the same affiliation as you, philosophically.
So I live in Boulder, and I've had the invites to join Nextdoor.com, which sounds like a wonderful thing. So you know what's going on in your neighborhood.
It's mostly a cat location service.
A cat location service, but I decided not to join Nextdoor because I want to think the best of my neighbors. I don't want to hate them all, and I live in Boulder. Right. There is not I can't imagine, and I know how political Nextdoor.com gets, but the idea of in a geographic proximity to be able to connect with other libertarians, other conservatives, have conversations with them, share news stories with them, and to talk about local politics. There's never been a place to do that. You mentioned caucuses, political caucuses. Yeah. And I remember that. You go, you meet at the school, and you have to say, all right, who we're going to nominate, in my case in Boulder, to lose for House District whatever,
right.
Who's going to run for county commissioner. And you talk about the politics, and you nominate somebody, and you meet people. And it was always surprising when I would go to those. I go, wait a minute, you?
I know.
That's one of the things. You're a conservative? You're a Republican? What?
And back to the original conversation we were having, where when you get shouted down enough, or when you see people shouting a viewpoint that is not yours online, it feels very isolating in real life as much as it is online. And so I wanted people to know that they're not alone. And because we see it, we political hacks, like we look at political data maps, and we know that there are X thousands of conservatives within this, square mile of just about anywhere in your state, if you know the data. But those people don't. It's not like they wear that on their sleeve and they don't show that. And frankly, we want that too. We don't want people to be talking about it all the time. But you do need to have a place to talk. You do need to have that kind of aha moment with your neighbors, like, oh, that's why the guy has the flag hanging out the window and the thing. You're like, I get it now. I'm so glad to know that I do have a conservative neighbor. And
the idea of, you just said not alone. I don't think people realize being a conservative or libertarian in this time especially, where our kids go to school and my kids come home with, training that is opposite of what mine is. My kid has been bullied for being a conservative at school, which is great because we live in Boulder, the land of tolerance and diversity. So to have a place where you're safe and you can actually have a reasonable conversation on a local level. For me, conversations about local politics as well. We all know about what's going on in D.C. We get so much overload on D.C. Every time Trump moves his thumb on a Twitter pad, it's a story. But I don't know who to vote for in the city council race. I don't know which county commissioner is the best one. I don't know what's going on in my own backyard as well, because I'm not talking to those people and we're not meeting face to face. So Caucus Room has really filled that void.
We've done that. We did some tests in the April-May municipal elections in Colorado and saw a difference that was made in areas where we had a good caucus room presence of people talking online, because it is a way, particularly in those nonpartisan races, where you can learn kind of who's probably more philosophically aligned with you that might be on the ballot. And if there's not somebody on the ballot, then pretty soon someone realizes, oh, we need a candidate, coming up for this particular seat or that seat. And as you know, I've heard you tell the story before about, the old lady in Boulder who used to tell you how to vote. Everybody's got that local, well-connected friend that's like, you got to run for this. We need this person for the school board.
Woman, Sheila, who was just wonderful, and every time there was an election, call her up, Sheila. Who do I vote for? I trust you because you follow local politics in Boulder. You know who's running for city council. Who should I vote for? And she would say, here are the ones I'm voting for. She passed away.
Yeah.
I lost that connection. And Caucus Room gives me the ability now to talk to a lot of people like her.
There's hundreds of people in Boulder County that
Let me do this pitch right now. If you haven't joined caucusroom.com, do it.
Thank you.
It is the wave of the future. It's a way to connect. It's a way to be part of something. And the cost is outrageous. You have what, a $30 a month plan, a $500?
It's free.
It's free. And so Facebook is free too. You both hope to make money the same way. So I'm assuming you're going to be the next Zuckerberg.
No. It'll be fun to figure out how to make money on it, but we think that people will want to advertise to the members, but we're not going to be trying to figure out what you're eating for breakfast based on anything. It's just if you're on Caucus Room and you want to if you want to target people who are on Caucus Room who maybe live in a particular geographic area, that's the extent of our micro-targeting that we'll allow, as opposed to what Facebook does. We think that, frankly, there are businesses that also are careful and scared to, to really try to reach a really great set of demographics, that people who want to support a local small business or something. We want to make that available for them. But setting that aside, we really just felt like people felt alone in their neighborhoods, particularly here in Colorado. Although we're now in all 50 states, but
let's talk about that part. You started this up, and I was surprised how quickly people gravitated to this. I've done online things, and this is people come on. They do get verified. You make sure that they're a human being. You also make sure that they're not a spy, that they're not working for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about this one, because if I'm going to bare my soul to this group, I want to make sure that I'm not just giving Sanders my information. How do you verify that I'm conservative enough for Caucus Room?
Well, we do ask that if you're going to join the community, we actually have a list of values. If you go to about.caucusroom.com, you can learn more about our stated values, and eventually, soon we hope to have the users to be able to sort of help update that list and keep it fresh and real to what our users believe in. But it's a basic set of basic conservative values, and if that seems like a good fit for you, then you're a good fit for Caucus Room. But these days, commercial data is so powerful that we are able to kind of check people's names against current
you have an algorithm.
We have commercial data that gives us a hint of whether or not someone might be very, very far to the left. After that, it gets a little more muddy, and we like to give people the benefit of the doubt. But if you're pretty far left, we do at least get a hint of that, and so we have some initial screening.
I used to be a Republican. I am now unaffiliated.
Yep.
I live in Boulder. It wasn't after they opened up primaries, which I think was not a good idea. There was no need for me to be affiliated. Now I can go vote in Democratic primaries. I still was okayed to be on Caucus Room, even though I'm unaffiliated. Is party registration the marker?
No, I don't know who let you in. I'm just kidding. I'm going to have to talk to them.
I talk to my people.
No, I think that party affiliation is not a factor. And I don't actually. It's hundreds of data points that they draw from in this algorithm.
Right, so if you're libertarian leaning, conservative leaning, but you're not registered Republican, you're still welcome.
Yeah. We would really, there's a really great group of unaffiliated conservatives on Caucus Room. It's one of our favorite groups, just because it's people who kind of felt like maybe they felt alone. They felt like maybe they don't fit in somewhere, and they are finding a good community on Caucus Room that is constructive. And just to give a few examples, I mean, as you know, unaffiliated voters get 2 ballots in the mail, and so during the
for primaries.
For primaries, and so during the primaries, there became the question of, okay, well, there's a primary in this particular area, and we've got a few dozen people who could cast a vote. How should we vote? What's the best way for conservatives to vote on this particular thing? And unaffiliated conservatives can have that conversation in a pretty secure enviornment in Caucus Room.
And I think about so many causes where you need to target people and talk to people who are of our persuasion. So,
and they're local. Politics is when it comes down
local,
to it,
it's hyper local.
It's hyper local, and so it's really important to know you're talking to those people nearby. Even the national stuff, and the national stuff is important to talk about, but it doesn't really play out. You can't do anything about what's in Washington D.C., but you can do something to help whatever national cause you're trying to do in your neighborhood, and so that's why we try to orient it there. And quite frankly, if you were to look at the architecture of Caucus Room, it looks a lot like the architecture, the bylaws essentially of a political movement or a political party, because it is organized geographically. There are ways to get interconnected nationally, and by issue-oriented things too. Or there are thought leaders like the Independence Institute that you can join. But when it comes down to it, all the business starts at the county level. That's how it works with political parties, and that is the same with how it works at Caucus Room.
So I speak at Republican events and other events every now and then. I've been speaking at and going to Republican events for the last 30 years. I remember when I went 30 years ago to some luncheon or something, I was by far the youngest guy in the room. I'm now 55 years old. I just came from a Republican lunch event. I'm still the youngest guy in the room, and it's partly that our cohorts, we don't quite get the whole meeting virally part. We don't get the whole younger people meet on social platforms. They don't go to their Elks Lodge anymore.
Right.
They meet through this. And there's so many ways for them to do that.
Yeah.
Caucus Room is now a way for younger people, as well as older people, to finally get connected with like-minded folks.
I was thinking of someone in my old neighborhood in Lakewood where I knew they just recently moved in, younger couple, and I thought, boy, I kind of wondered what their politics might be. And it was interesting to see those young people join Caucus Room I didn't reach out to them. They didn't know I was involved in it. I just knew them through random acquaintances and whatnot. And to see that was a confirmation to me that there are some younger folks now that are finding it as like, okay, this is what I've been looking for, and I finally found that community. And I'm not somewhere in a cancel culture world of Twitter and Facebook where every joke you tell or something is going to get called out wrong.
I get called racist enough everywhere else I go.
Right.
Is there a place where I can go have a conversation and not be called racist? Maybe Caucus Room is the answer to that.
It's actually, that's really important too, because it is important to talk through those issues. And I think I've seen people just in general in society, they want to learn how to be more sensitive and how to speak in a way that articulates the concern they have without sounding bad. And you can't even start that anymore. No. Like you can't even try that anymore. And you do need to have a place to work that out. And it's probably best to do it with some people that are like-minded and know where you're headed. And
also having policy differences with people, but doing it in a constructive way. Most of the people who are on Caucus Room probably see the world roughly the same way and have disagreements on how politically we get there. So we can have those fights.
It's interesting. It is really, I noticed this, quite frankly, the difference between the two political conventions that we just saw recently where, of course, we make jokes about how the fact checkers didn't really check any facts in the Democratic one, but then they checked all the facts in the Republican one. Well, setting aside the obvious other reasons, one reason was because there wasn't a lot of substantive discussion at the first one, and then the second one, there was a lot of policy issues discussed, and we see it a lot in Caucus Room. People, conservatives by nature, are policy wonks, and they love talking policy, and it is fun to be able to do that on Caucus Room.
The left uses lots of fuzzy terms. Community is one of my favorite ones. Community. There is a community that pops out for Caucus Room that didn't meet before. I've learned, it took me a while to realize the importance of magazines in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, pre-internet. Mm-hmm. But magazines, specialty magazines were popping up. And learned this really from Bob Brown, Colonel Bob Brown, who did Soldier of Fortune magazine. Oddly, from Boulder, Colorado was its headquarters, back when Boulder actually did have diversity.
Right.
And, he reached out, and that magazine was a touchstone for Vietnam vets who felt so alone, and they got this thing. It was like, wait a second, I'm not alone. Yeah. And they started having conferences and conventions, and they got to meet, and it helped so many people. I think of...
And Talk Radio does that, too.
Talk Radio did that. Reason Magazine did it for libertarians. Mm-hmm. National Review, Buckley's magazine, did it for conservatives. Mm-hmm. And that platform has now changed. Mm-hmm. And since fewer people are listening to Talk Radio, because not that erectile dysfunction ads aren't delightful, but 20 minutes of them an hour is too much. Now with Caucus Room, you're finding, wait a second, I'm not alone. So you go to a Republican event and there might be 50 people at the lunch. That's terrific. But when you're with this group, how many people are there that are how many people are on Caucus Room right now?
We're
roughly.
We've got around 15,000 users right now, wow. And we're growing at 30% a month, hopefully. That's usually our target.
Wow.
And but you know,
that's why when you engage a caucus room, it's great to go to the Elks Lodge and there's 20 guys there, or the Republican breakfast. Do that. It's great. You need that. But to be able to engage with 15,000 people and also your neighborhood, it's pretty remarkable.
One other thing I'll just say we're really proud of is that I wish you could go to your Elks Club. I want you to go to keep going to clubs. It's hard to go to clubs right now because of the lockdowns, and that became such an existential issue in terms of meeting politically this year that Caucus Room became a really important virtual meeting place, and we had virtual meetings. We actually held something like 15 political assemblies on Caucus Room for Republican parties at the county, congressional district, and state levels. We hosted the Colorado State Republican Party's convention virtually. We hosted all the delegates to have their floor discussion on Caucus Room. And then we also hosted a full 2-day assembly or Republican convention for the Washington State Republicans and in June. And so that was we've got a great community now in Washington State of Caucus Room members.
Before I ask about that, I'm going to plug it one more time. If you're not a member of Caucus Room, just go on.
Yeah.
It's free, it's cool, it's wonderful.
And if your club isn't meeting right now, you can actually do those virtual meetings on Caucus Room virtually in a secure area, secure meeting environment.
One of the things that excites me about Caucus Room is that it's closing the digital gap, and that the left has had dominance in technology now for 15 years. That they understand crowdfunding better, they understand analytics better, they have dominance in the media, they have dominance in entertainment, they have dominance in education, they have dominance on online platforms, and the right is very slow to catch up, partly because most conservatives are still trying to figure out how to get their VCRs to stop flashing 12. It's not a savvy group. But that is beginning to change, and I see Caucus Room as a giant leap forward to connect conservatives in a way that becomes a political powerhouse.
Yeah, there were several articles recently about how Democrats are not knocking on doors as much as they have been. Frankly, I think knocking on doors is still really important, but that because of the pandemic and for other reasons, they are putting all of their eggs in the digital organizing basket, which is to say they want to, whereas they used to try to find a floor captain in an apartment building where that person on the floor would knock and tell their neighbors, hey, I'm voting for Obama and you should too. Conservatives were never that well organized at the canvassing level, but at least they understood and knocking on doors and
conservatives knock on doors used to say, I live down below you.
Yeah.
Shut up and stop talking to me.
So now it's digital, right. and they know how to do it through Facebook and Twitter, and frankly, Twitter is helping them, right? And all of these different platforms want them to be able to help communicate their values to their close friends and the people that they influence online. They're using influencers on these platforms online. You can do anything you're doing on Caucus Room. There's a button where you can click to share it to Twitter or Facebook. So if you're sharing a link, if the Independence Institute, which they often do, have great columns or think pieces, you can share that to Facebook or Twitter
just by clicking on it right there.
Clicking right
from
there.
Caucus Room.
Yep.
Talk to me about the clubs. Independence Institute, which I run, I wanted to jump on this right away.
Yeah,
the idea to be able to communicate with fans of independence or followers of independence or people who want our information and do so for free was something that excited me. But there are all these different groups. Remember when you're in college and there was a sense of, hey, come on and join the chess club because we're the coolest.
Right.
No, come join the Glee club. No, join this club. Caucus Room has a bit of that vibe to it.
Yeah. So we have 300 or more. We have more than 300 groups on Caucus Room. But a group isn't the right word. There are small clubs. There are think tanks. There are news rooms. There are political parties. Certainly two of the largest that we have is the Washington State Republican Party because they held their convention, and the Colorado Republican Party. There's a large Trump campaign supporter group. But there's a lot of other groups. So you can sort of select stuff you want to follow, content that you want to be seeing would be one way of looking at it. Or, if you want to be a part of a regular virtual meeting on Caucus Room, and we have some, party executive committees that actually do their business on Caucus Room on a biweekly or monthly basis, just so you can have anything from a small club to a really large group. But just so you know, like we want the group functionality to become really dynamic for group leaders and for the users, so that you really, really feel like you're in that community all the time, and growing a two-way communication system. A lot of political campaigns and the Independence Institute and think tanks, they all have email lists, and they love to talk about building their lists. Our statement to that is that you should, that's good, but that's one-way communication, and the two-way communication brings them in to be a part of your community.
So, as somebody who's done talk radio for over 2 decades, talk radio, particularly in its heyday, was this amazingly beautiful, powerful thing, because you could find your community, people got together, you could actually have the time to dive into a subject, whether it was silly or sports or politics, and you had time to get into the details. But what I loved the most about talk radio is the instant feedback. Yeah. And if you're going to put up an argument, you better watch out, because every truck driver who has a cell phone is able to take you on right then, right there. Right. Caucus Room is kind of the next iteration of talk radio.
Very much so.
That people are putting up their arguments, but there's a dialogue that's going. Yep. And everybody's moving roughly in the same direction, so it's not out there calling you names, but it's the next step.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, some of the great talk radio hosts are the ones who can help you see where things are headed, or maybe they give you some information you wouldn't have known how to find. And imagine sharing a clickable link where you can really actually do something with that information.
Right. I remember the glory days of Mike Rosen on KOA.
Yeah.
A clear-thinking guy who challenged people's thought process, not just what to think, but how to think, in a relatively consistent way, and then always giving the information, the backup. And what's great about Caucus Room is you're meeting those people who can help clear your thinking and give you the materials as well.
Yeah, there are.
It's a click away.
We learned that talking with Silicon Valley type experts, they tell you that actually the amount of people who put content into social media versus the ones that watch it, it's a ratio of something like 5 to 95. Or 1 to 100 almost even. In other words, like the content.
So when I put something on Facebook or Caucus Room, the amount of people who are looking at it is not 1 to 1.
No, it is. It's 100 times. Like most of the people that are logging in are not engaging or almost doing anything. They're not even liking stuff so much as they are reading it. And I'm sure you probably noticed this, where someone you forgot what you were even friends with on social media said, "Oh, I read your article," or "I saw your comment and saw you have a conversation online, and really influenced me." And you're thinking to yourself, "Wow, that's weird." And then you realize that of the several thousand friends you might have, that you really only talk to 20 of them, and it's the other thousands are actually watching you and learning, but they just didn't want to engage. I think they do. We've seen that they do engage a little bit more than that on Caucus Room because they feel a little more safe to do that. But the important thing is it's content they've been looking for without all the rest of the noise, and they know that we're not manipulating it the way that Facebook or Twitter would, the way you discussed earlier.
When I heard your original plans for Caucus Room, immediately I went to what I think to be the biggest point, which this could be a dating app for me. Right. That your job was to build this out to find a woman who would date me. How goes that effort?
Of the 15,000, none of them want to date you, if that's what you're asking.
I have the same ratio on basically every platform.
Okay, there you go. When you have a really good sense of community, we've got a lot of requests of functions that have really virtually nothing to do with politics at all. And,
really?
We want to help build all of that. I mean, our engineers, they are always putting out new features. I don't think the dating app is coming. Maybe we'll put a goal by Valentine's Day or something for you. But
Actually, help out with me. Maybe if you could put in like the restraining order button, that would make it a lot faster.
That's right. That is actually
click here for the Caldera restraining
order. That's something that, ironically, in order to get on the app stores, we're making sure that users can block people easier. So we're working on some stuff like that right now for you.
Will it be on a phone soon?
We are working really hard on that. There are a lot of lessons learned on how to, comply with all their things. The discussions about, the subjectivity, some of the stuff you might be seeing in the news about the proprietary nature of whether or not someone should be allowed to just be on the App Store because, or if Apple and Google can play hardball is something that we're watching closely. I'm not going to cast any aspersions right now because I don't think we've been treated unfairly yet, but it has been a learning process. And, when you get into the App Store, I'll put it this way, we know we're really big time then because we will have done a lot of things under the hood to improve the performance of the site, but also to get into that space and to have a little bit of real estate on your phone right there on the main screen is something that we're taking really, really seriously. So it's taken longer than I think we had thought it would take, but when it's on there, it's going to be really great and worthwhile. So
wrap this up. I think that Caucus Room was the technological advancement that we needed, we being conservatives and libertarians. Not just from a political point of view, not just so that campaigns and issues and you could find organizers and you could find campaign workers and people who knock on the doors and people to do word of mouth stuff. That's all really crucial and that's needed. But I think I don't want to say, it would be too much to say from a spiritual side, but from just a humanity side, conservatives and libertarians needed a way to be able to connect with one another without algorithms pushing them down on search levels, without the fear of somebody getting you pulled off because of something you said. We needed this, and we needed it now more than ever. And so I think the timing of this going into this election is crucial.
Thank you. And it's interesting to see where it grows. We actually see the fastest growth in blue states and in purple states where those people do feel alone. And that's anecdotal. A lot of the growth we've had is actually very recent. Like we had a little bit of a lull after the assemblies, or at least we were so focused on the assemblies that we knew the growth was coming because of the assemblies. But now we're watching the growth in areas where you might not have expected it. We've got a really great groups in Miami and in Los Angeles and in areas where they just don't really know there was any other Republicans. And the truth is there are a ton. There are a ton of conservatives in every town.
Can you have private clubs on this?
Yeah, you can have closed groups. There's lots of security levels to limit your
So if you want to put together a group to get somebody elected, but you don't want everybody else out because you want to talk strategy, you can have a closed group as well.
Yeah, all of those different security levels. That was how we did the credentialing for the convention, so that there was really a 3-tier step process to get that.
Has this been meeting your expectations? So you started, it's been out for a year. Tell me, if you went back a year and said in a year you're going to have 15,000 people using this platform.
I would say that I think I would have anticipated more, simply because I think our tech I didn't know enough about the tech process to realize that growth is a wonderful gift until you find a capacity issue with your tech. And so we found some of that we had to deal with, and we did deal with it, which was interesting. But the startup story for any business is kind of a roller coaster, and it's been so fun. A year ago I left the lobbying business and I don't miss it at all. I mean, I enjoyed engaging in policy issues still, but I really, really feel like we're starting a city. I feel like we're starting a community from the ground up, the way a conservative would want to start it. And the people who join it, the most fun thing every day is when new people join. That part is super rewarding. So I think we just have to keep We just have to keep making it a great experience.
That sense of, wait a minute, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. I'm not as bad as the crowds keep telling. It's like, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled for your success.
Thank you.
Keep it going. And if you haven't been to caucusroom.com, just get on it. You won't regret it. Matthew, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.